Hey guys, welcome back to more Malicious Compliance Reddit stories about awful bosses. In this Ripestories video, I was running an entire luxury hotel behind the scenes, but no extra pay, no recognition, only for my boss to look me dead in the eye and say, "You're not leadership material, stay in your lane." So I stayed in my lane and 48 hours later, everything collapsed. Let's dive right into the video. And the first one is titled, "Boss does not want my help unless she specifically asks for it. Poster r/malicious-compliance. So a few years ago, I took a customer service job and my boss, Shirley, was the laziest, snarkiest person I've ever worked around. She spent her day usually on social media and personal calls while her inbox grew. Shirley's boss rarely came around and was happy as long as Shirley did not bring any problems to her, so of course Shirley didn't and she buried any problems. After I'd been there a couple of weeks, Shirley was showing us some new procedure. I don't even remember what it was, but it was something I'd done in a previous position, and there was a much easier way of doing it, so I asked if I could make a suggestion. Shirley instantly shot it down. "No, I don't want suggestions or help unless I specifically ask for them. Just do what I tell you to do." It was embarrassing and demeaning to say the least. When Shirley went for lunch, the gal who had been training me asked me what I was gonna suggest and I showed her. She agreed it was much more efficient and she showed the others. She told me they just worked around Shirley. They all disliked her and just waited until she was away to discuss problems and came up with solutions and left Shirley out of it. A year later, the lady who trained me retired, but before she left, she showed me how to run phone statistic reports. They showed how many calls each rep took, how long the calls lasted, how many rings before each call was answered, typical call center stuff. She asked me to take over putting together a report including email statistics each month to send to the e-commerce manager. Shirley was to give me the email statistics. After the first month, I emailed Shirley asking for the email stats, and she ignored it. After the second month, the same thing. I decided if it wasn't important to her, then I just wouldn't do it. I figured if questioned, I would just show the emails I sent Shirley, reminding her so my butt would be covered. Well, nothing ever came of it, so things went for the next couple of years. Then came the announcement that Shirley's boss had been fired, and while they searched for a replacement, Shirley would be reporting to the president of the company. She was terrified. He had her jumping through hoops, he had her submitting reports to him, attending meetings, answering questions, and she returned from one meeting absolutely frantic. She told the senior rep Angela that he wanted her to bring him phone statistics that afternoon and she had no idea where to get them. I knew, Angela knew I knew, and while Shirley sat at her desk trying to figure out what to do, Angela came to me and said, "You're not gonna tell her, right?" I said, "Well, she once told me that she didn't want my help unless she specifically asked for it, right?" Well, this time she hasn't specifically asked me, and we grinned at each other. Shirley went to her meeting empty-handed and she ended up getting fired a week or so later. I don't think it was because she didn't have the phone statistics, but that was probably one of many things that made it apparent that she didn't know what she was doing. And yeah, honestly guys, I don't have any sympathy for bosses like Shirley. She got exactly what she deserved if you ask me. And the next one is the fantastic Malicious Compliance title story, which is titled, "Boss said I'm not ready for promotion, so I stopped doing her job." And by the way guys, if you enjoy the Malicious Compliance stories, then please don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and maybe even post some star emojis in the comments if you want to show your support. Thank you so much for all the help. So for context, I work as an operations coordinator at a hotel. Our property is the kind of place that caters heavily to corporate accounts and business travelers during the week and then completely pivots to hosting massive chaotic weddings and events on the weekends. We have a large banquet hall, several conference rooms, and a full-service restaurant, and hundreds of rooms. The money pays the bills, but the environment is incredibly fast-paced, loud, and constantly stressful, and for the longest time, I genuinely loved my job. I liked the staff, I liked the challenge of solving complex logistical problems, and I took pride in keeping the hotel running smoothly. When you work in hospitality for a while, you develop a sort of sixth sense for disaster. You learn how to spot a major problem days before it actually happens, and you learn how to quietly fix it before the guests ever notice. My boss, the general manager of the property, was a woman named Brittany. And guys, my prayers have been answered. Shout out to anyone who still remembers Brittany Karen. That was one epic Reddit story. Anyway, Brittany was polished and confident in front of corporate, but she barely understood the actual day-to-day operations. She was the type of boss who always wore immaculate tailored blazers and knew exactly what corporate buzzwords to use when speaking to regional directors. She loved talking about optimizing the guest experience and driving revenue. However, Brittany knew absolutely nothing about how a hotel actually functions. She had no idea how long it took our housekeeping staff to physically turn over a trashed room. She had no idea how our complex property management software worked, and she didn't know how to fix a payroll scheduling error, how to pacify an angry bride whose event space wasn't ready, or how to handle a vendor who showed up with the wrong catering supplies. Because Brittany didn't know how to do these things, they all fell on me. My official job title was Operations Coordinator. According to the corporate handbook, my actual job description involved basic data entry, answering the secondary administrative phone line, filing compliance paperwork, and keeping track of office supply inventory. But over the years, my role had morphed into doing basically everything Brittany was supposed to do but couldn't handle. I handled group bookings, vendor schedules, staff coverage, guest complaints, VIP arrivals, maintenance coordination, wedding timelines, and corporate audit prep. When the overnight auditor called in sick with no warning, I was the one who woke up, called off duty agents, and got the desk covered before the morning rush. When the air conditioning broke on the 4th floor during a heat wave, Brittany locked herself in her office, and I was the one who stood in the lobby, handed out cold water, negotiated partial refunds, and personally moved families to a partner property so they would not ruin our online scores. I prepared Brittany's occupancy and revenue reports so she could look competent on her corporate calls. I responded to emails from corporate that were addressed directly to Brittany because she would just forward them to me with a quick note asking me to handle it. I did all of this without any extra pay and without complaining. I did it because I wanted the hotel to succeed, and I knew that the assistant general manager position was gonna open up soon. The previous assistant general manager had transferred to another property, and the role had been left vacant to save on payroll. I was doing the work of the coordinator, the assistant general manager, and half of the general manager duties all at once. It only made sense that I would get the official promotion when they finally opened up the requisition. Well, when the time came, I formally applied for the assistant general manager position. I spent days putting together a professional portfolio of everything I'd been handling. I printed out the positive reviews from VIP guests I had personally assisted. I gathered the emails from vendors thanking me for fixing their confusing contracts, and I walked into Brittany's office feeling incredibly confident. In short, I knew the hotel inside and out, and I knew the staff, and I knew the computer systems better than the IT department. It felt like a guaranteed win. Brittany sat behind her large desk, scrolling through something on her phone. She barely looked at my portfolio. She poked at it with her pen and then slid it back across the desk towards me. She sighed heavily, acting like I was wasting her time. "Look, you're great at support work, but you're not leadership material," she said, pushing my portfolio completely away. "You lack the executive presence for a management role. So we are going with an outside hire. You're simply not ready for a promotion, OP." I sat there completely stunned. I felt my face getting hot. "Brittany, I've been running the entire front desk schedule, handling VIP arrivals, and doing your daily revenue reports for over a year." She rolled her eyes and cut me off. "And that is exactly the problem. You are overstepping. You need to stay in your lane. Focus on your assigned duties, OP," she instructed. "Stop trying to do my job and just be a coordinator." That single response changed everything. "Stay in my lane, focus on my assigned duties, stop trying to do her job." I stared at her for a few seconds. The shock and anger in my chest turned into something very cold, very calm, and very calculated. I smiled politely at her. I told her I understood completely. I picked up my portfolio, walked out of her office, and went straight back to my desk in the back office. I opened the employee portal on my computer. I downloaded the official corporate-approved job description for an operations coordinator. I printed it out and taped it to the wall right next to my monitor. It was a very short, very simple list: data entry, inventory tracking, answering the coordinator phone extension, forwarding inquiries to the appropriate department. Nowhere on that list did it say that I had to fix room blocks for weddings. So nowhere did it say that I had to baby the corporate VIP clients, nowhere did it say I had to audit the purchase orders for the kitchen or do the general manager's complex financial reports. So I decided right then and there to comply with Brittany's orders exactly. I was gonna stay in my lane, just as she said. I was gonna be the best, most literal operations coordinator this hotel company had ever seen. The first thing I did was set up a new email template. It read, "Hello, this matter appears to require managerial approval or intervention. Please contact the general manager directly at her email or phone extension for assistance. Thank you." Then I sat back in my chair and waited. I knew exactly how fragile the hotel's daily operations really were. I knew exactly how much invisible glue I'd been applying every single day to keep the place from falling apart. I figured it would take maybe a week for Disnii to realize her mistake. But I was wrong. It took around 48 hours for everything to completely collapse, but the first domino fell later that same afternoon. We had a massive wedding party arriving for a weekend event. The bride's family had booked 30 rooms. Normally, well before a wedding, I would go into the property management system, manually verify the room block, make sure all the rooms were assigned to the correct floor so the family could be together, and confirm the billing routing. Disnii had been the one communicating directly with this specific bride, and Disnii had received 3 different emails from the wedding planner asking to finalize the room block and confirm the credit card on file. Disnii had ignored all of them. In the past, I would have seen those unanswered emails sitting in the shared inbox, quietly logged into the system, and finalized the block myself so the guests would have a smooth check-in process, but this time I didn't touch the system. I stayed in my lane. I sat at my desk and updated a spreadsheet for office supply inventory, just like my job description dictated. A few hours later, the bride, her mother, and a large group of bridesmaids arrived in the lobby dragging heavy suitcases. The evening shift front desk management agent welcomed them and typed the bride's name into the computer. I watched from the window of my back office as the agent's face turned completely white. He started clicking his mouse frantically. The rooms were not blocked. Because the hotel was completely booked with a corporate tech conference, our booking system had automatically released the unconfirmed wedding rooms to the general public the night before. The system is programmed to maximize profit, so if a block is not hard confirmed by management, it releases the inventory. The hotel was now completely sold out. We only had 4 random scattered rooms left available for a wedding party that needed 30, and the lobby literally erupted. The bride started crying loudly, sitting on her suitcase. The mother of the bride started screaming at the front desk agent, demanding to know how a luxury hotel could lose 30 rooms the day before a wedding. The front desk agent looked through the glass of my office, making wild eye contact with me, pleading for help. And yeah, normally I would run out there, pull some strings, upgrade a few regular guests to suites, walk a few people to a partner hotel down the street, and fix the disaster before it got worse. But instead, I picked up my desk phone and called the front desk extension. I told the panicked agent that dealing with sold-out room blocks for VIP events was strictly a management issue, so I advised him to call Disnii. The agent called Disney's office. Well, Disnii was forced to come downstairs and face the screaming mother of the bride. Disnii had absolutely no idea how the booking system worked, and she tried to offer them free drink vouchers for the hotel bar, which only made the mother scream louder. It took Disnii hours of public humiliation in a crowded lobby and thousands of dollars in corporate refunds to move other guests to different hotels just to free up enough rooms for the wedding party. I clocked out and went home while Disnii was still arguing with the bride's father near the elevators. The next morning, the collapse accelerated further. I sat at my desk, drank my coffee, and checked my email. There was a notification from the front desk that a high-level corporate client was arriving soon. This was a VIP client that the corporate office desperately wanted to keep happy, as his company booked hundreds of rooms nights with us every year. Disnii had personally promised this client a top-floor suite upgrade, a late checkout, and a customized welcome basket featuring local wines, specific artisanal cheeses, and sparkling water. Disnii had made these promises over the phone weeks ago, and she wrote the notes on a yellow pad in her office. She never entered the requests into the property management system, though, and she never told housekeeping manager about the suite. She also never told the food and beverage supervisor about the customized welcome basket. I knew about these promises because I had seen the notepad on her desk when I was dropping off some payroll paperwork, and normally I would have taken the initiative to order the basket, assign the suite in the computer, and notify the cleaning staff. But not anymore. I was not leadership material. Arranging customized wine baskets and overriding room assignments was definitely outside my assigned scope of duties. The VIP client walked through the front doors and the morning front desk agent checked him in, completely unaware of who he was, and handed him the keys to a standard double room overlooking the delivery alley by the dumpsters. No top floor suite, no wine, no cheese. Minutes later, the VIP client came back down to the lobby. He was not screaming like the wedding party was, but he was radiating absolute fury. He walked straight up to the desk and demanded to speak to the general manager immediately. Brittany was called down again. The VIP client loudly berated her in front of a lobby full of people eating breakfast, asking why he was being treated like a random walk-in off the street after she had personally guaranteed his luxury accommodations. Brittany stammered and apologized, looking completely panicked and out of her depth. She tried to call housekeeping to clean a suite immediately, but housekeeping was already overwhelmed dealing with the massive mess left by the wedding party the night before. The VIP client looked at Brittany in disgust. He told her that he was pulling his company's entire account and moving his business to our direct competitor across town. He dropped his room keys on the desk, checked out, and left. Brittany stormed into the back office. Her face was red and she was breathing heavily. She stood in my doorway and demanded to know why the VIP basket was not prepared and why the suite was not blocked in the system. I looked at her with a perfectly calm expression and I told her that I was never formally informed of the VIP requests, and I reminded her that managing large client accounts and arranging executive upgrades was a managerial duty, and I repeated her exact words back to her. I said I was just focusing on my assigned duties and staying in my lane, exactly as she has instructed me to do. She glared at me, opened her mouth to yell, but could not find a single valid reason to write me up or punish me. I had not broken a single rule, I just stopped doing her job. She spun around on her heels and slammed my office door on her way out. The disasters continued to pile up. The hotel was hosting a massive conference for medical professionals. Part of their expensive contract included a fully catered hot breakfast buffet in the main banquet hall. The local vendor who supplied our fresh pastries, bagel and hot breakfast items required a signed purchase order well in advance in order to prepare and deliver the massive amount of food. I used to print the purchase order and place it directly in Brittany's hand, wait for her to physically sign it, and then fax it to the vendor myself to ensure it got done. Well, as you can imagine, before all of this started, I had simply attached the latest purchase order to an email and sent it to Brittany with a note stating that it needed managerial approval, just a regular coordinator forwarding a document to management. Brittany, of course, had ignored the email, and when the morning of the breakfast arrived, hundreds of hungry medical professionals came downstairs expecting a lavish hot meal. They walked into the banquet hall and found completely empty silver chafing dishes, no coffee urns, and a bare buffet line. The conference organizer was furious. They tracked down our poor food and beverage supervisor, who was completely confused and terrified. The supervisor immediately called the food vendor, and the vendor bluntly stated that they never received an approved purchase order from the general manager, so they simply didn't prepare or load the delivery trucks. The supervisor had to call Brittany, and Brittany had to scramble in an absolute panic, authorizing the kitchen staff to run to local grocery stores and bakeries to buy hundreds of dollars worth of boxed donuts, stale bagels, and instant coffee just to put something on the table. The conference organizer was so insulted by the grocery store food that they demanded a massive discount on their final bill, citing a major breach of contract. So Brittany had no choice but to agree, costing the hotel thousands of dollars in revenue. Then came the issue with the corporate reporting. Every single week, the corporate office required a detailed revenue and occupancy report. It tracked sales, room turnover, banquet profits, and operating margins. It was a complex multi-page spreadsheet that took a solid hour to compile properly. Filing this report was strictly the general manager's job, but Brittany hated spreadsheets and had delegated it to me months ago. Well, I did not open the spreadsheet. I sat at my desk and organized some old filing cabinets. My phone rang. It was the regional director's assistant from corporate asking where the revenue report was. I kept my voice polite and professional, and I said, "I am no longer handling the revenue reports," I explained. Brittany recently informed me that I was overstepping by performing management duties and instructed me to just focus strictly on my coordinator tasks. You will need to contact her for all financial reporting going forward. There was a long silence on the other end of the phone. The assistant thanked me very coldly and then hung up. Minutes later, Brittany's office phone started ringing loudly. I could hear her muffled voice through the thin drywall, frantically trying to explain to the corporate office why the report was not done. I could hear the absolute panic in her tone as she logged into the financial system and realized that she had no idea how to pull the required data. It took her hours to compile a report that was full of massive mathematical errors, which only resulted in more angry phone calls from the corporate accounting department. Just as we were closing in on the 48-hour mark since my promotion was denied, the grand finale arrived. I was sitting at my desk when I heard the sliding glass doors of the lobby open. The energy in the building instantly shifted. It became completely tense. Walking towards the front desk were two people in sharp business clothes carrying thick, heavy binders. They were corporate inspectors. Hotels get audited regularly. These audits check absolutely everything. They check the pool chemical logs, the fire door maintenance records, the keycard audit logs, the financial records, and the staff training certifications. Failing an audit is a huge deal. It can put a hotel on probation, so-called, and cost the general manager their annual bonus or even their job. The corporate office always sent a subtle warning email about a week before an audit, but they never give the exact date. They give a window though, and Brittany had received that warning email days ago. She had forwarded it to me without reading it. Normally, I would have spent the entire week preparing. I would have updated the safety training logs, checked the fire extinguisher tags on all 6 floors, organized the vendor insurance files, and made sure every single compliance document was perfectly arranged in a neat binder sitting directly on Brittany's desk. But this time, I had done absolutely none of that. I had left the files exactly where they always were, scattered across different hidden folders on the shared computer drive and buried in random physical filing cabinets in the basement. The inspectors walked up to the front desk, asked for the general manager, and Brittany came out of her office. When she saw the corporate inspectors, all the color drained from her face. She looked like she was gonna be sick. The lead inspector introduced himself and handed Brittany a clipboard with a list of documents they needed to see immediately. The list included the updated chemical safety data sheets, the most recent health department kitchen inspection report, the employee anti-harassment training sign-off sheets, and the vendor liability insurance certificates. Brittany stared at the list, her hands were shaking. She had no idea what half those documents were, let alone where they were kept. She brought the inspectors into the back office and she pointed them to the large conference room, offered them water, and then came running to my desk. She was sweating. She leaned over my desk and whispered frantically, begging me to tell her where the safety data sheets and training logs were stored. I looked at her and blinked. I calmly stated that document retention and audit preparation were high-level management responsibilities. So therefore I told her I was just a coordinator and I didn't have the proper security clearance or authority to manage compliance files. Brittany looked like she was gonna explode. She begged me to help her. She said her job was on the line and she would be fired if she failed the audit. I reminded her that just recently she had explicitly told me I was not leadership material, so I reminded her that she ordered me to stay in my lane. I told her I was just strictly following her directives as any good support staff member should. Brittany had to go back into the conference room completely empty-handed. The audit lasted for hours. It was a total massacre. The inspectors walked through the entire hotel, found multiple issues that normally would have been caught and fixed during my pre-audit sweeps. They asked Brittany basic operational questions about the hotel's emergency procedures and she couldn't answer a single one of them. They asked for basic safety documentation. She couldn't provide it. The hotel failed the audit miserably. We failed the safety section, we failed the administrative section, and we failed the vendor compliance section too. The only section we passed was the basic room cleanliness score, and that was entirely due to the hard work of the housekeeping staff, no thanks to Brittany. Before the inspectors left, they called a formal meeting in Brittany's office, and they also asked me to join and sit at the table. The lead inspector looked at Brittany. His face was stern. He told her that the state of the hotel administration was completely unacceptable for a property of this size. He also pointed out the massive, costly failures that had just occurred, and they already knew about the botched wedding block, the lost VIP client account, and the unapproved breakfast vendor. The regional director had clearly briefed them on the chaos. Brittany immediately went on the defense. Her survival instincts kicked in and she pointed a shaking finger directly at me across the desk. OP stopped helping on purpose, she told the inspectors, claiming the operational failures were my fault. She said that I was insubordinate and had suddenly stopped doing my work to sabotage the property and make her look bad in front of corporate. The inspector turned to me, he asked if this was true, and he asked why I had suddenly stopped handling the daily operations and reports. I reached into my folder, pulled out my official corporate approved job description, and I laid it flat on the table. I then pulled out a printed copy of the email where I clearly forwarded the breakfast purchase order for her approval. I pulled out a printed copy of the email notification regarding the VIP client, and finally, I pulled out a written, timestamped summary of the meeting Disnii and I had regarding my promotion. I pointed to my official job description on the table, then looked directly at Disnii. "You explicitly told me that I was overstepping," I said, my voice steady and clear in the quiet room. "You told me I was not leadership material and you ordered me to stay in my lane and focus strictly on my assigned coordinator tasks." I turned back to the inspector. "I simply followed my manager's direct orders to the letter. I stopped doing her job and returned to mine. The result is what you've seen today. Without me doing her job for her, she has no idea how to run this hotel." Disney's jaw actually dropped. "You set me up," she stammered, her face turning purple. "No," I replied, looking her right in the eyes. "I just stayed in my lane, just like you said." Disnii sat there completely speechless. She tried to formulate a denial, but she couldn't. She had absolutely no proof to counter my physical documentation. She had nothing. The inspectors carefully collected my paperwork, put it in their binders, and they thanked me for my time and asked me to leave the office so they could speak with Disnii privately. They stayed in that room with her for a long time, and when the door finally opened, Disnii walked out. She didn't look at me. She went to her desk, grabbed her purse, and walked out the front doors. The lead inspector called me back into the office. Not long after, my boss's boss contacted me and told me I cannot authorize back pay or contract changes on the spot. He said honestly, "But I can offer you the interim assistant general manager title right now with the accompanying pay bump. Once HR opens the formal investigation into Disney's gross negligence tomorrow, we will get the regional director on the phone to hash out the rest of your terms." I accepted the interim role. I knew better than to push for everything instantly, but getting the title and the pay bump in writing was enough for day one. Corporate finished their formal investigation shortly after. Disnii was suspended without pay during the review process, and eventually she was quietly transferred to a much smaller, lower-tier budget property several towns over to avoid corporate paying out her severance package. Given her complete lack of operational skills, I doubt she lasted very long there either. As for me though, I spent the following week putting the hotel back together. I finalized the upcoming wedding room blocks. I also called the local vendors and smoothed over the damaged relationships. I submitted the revenue reports on time. Everything went back to normal, except this time I had the property management title, the proper salary in my bank account, and the deep, satisfying knowledge of exactly what happens when you tell the person holding everything together to just stay in their lane. And honestly guys, I'm kind of amazed at Disney's performance. I mean, she kind of achieved a 48-hour hotel destruction speedrun here. Also, the absolute audacity to tell the person doing all your daily operations that they lack executive presence right before fumbling a corporate VIP client into a standard room overlooking the dumpsters. It is just crazy. But then again guys, this story shows why it's so important to keep physical documentation with you. If OP did not have all of this documentation, maybe Disnii could have blamed all these failures on him. Anyway, now let's read some comments from Reddit about the story. The first one said, "This is absolutely glorious, malicious compliance. You spent an entire year doing the work of an operations coordinator and half of the general manager's duties without a single dime of extra pay. Props to you. You gave Disnii exactly what she deserved." And another kind of unhinged person said, "Everyone sucks here. Disnii is obviously a terrible manager who took advantage of your hard work and knew absolutely nothing about basic hotel operations. However, your brand of malicious compliance actively hurt innocent people who were just trying to enjoy their events, and you willingly let a mom of the bride scream in a lobby because their wedding block was dropped. So yeah, since you had all the documentation and emails saved up, you could have just gone straight to the regional director with your evidence instead of letting the hotel crash and burn." And yeah guys, I'm not 100% sure if I agree with that. I think OP did everything perfectly if you ask me. And before we end the video, let's read another malicious compliance story. This one is titled, "Friend can only bank overtime. His boss had quite a surprise when he retired early." So a friend of mine worked for a big government department, but despite their bigness, they were understaffed and didn't pay overtime. However, you could bank that overtime to take time off, and you never lost that bank time if you didn't take it, say within the year. So when my friend figured out that he had 2 years worth of overtime, he waited until he was 2 years from retirement retirement and took 2 years of vacation just before retiring. And yeah guys, that's an absolutely epic way to make use of overtime. Thank you for watching. Please check out my playlist on the left if you cannot get enough of my content, and I will see you again tomorrow.